welcome back, everybody. I hope that you got a coffee, a break, stretch the legs, and we are going to get into our first panel session of the day. So this panel is called Be Brave, and I'm really happy to welcome Bola Agumafun, who I know quite well from going back in time. We've got Mel Esquere as well, and we've got our own Louise Rogers from Best. Sorry, I should have said Bola is from Tisserand Engineers, Mel's with WikiHouse, and Louise is with us at Best. So the title, I mean, I think you probably got a theme running here. We're talking about, this morning we dwelled a lot about being who you are and allowing the vulnerability to come through, and this is about, you know, what happens next? What's that being brave piece look like? So we're going to come to each of the speakers for just about 2 minutes and ask them to reflect on what being brave in their work looks like. And actually, Bola, I'm glad that it's you who's going to start, because we completely stole something from what you said when we were having our briefing call. And in fact, it was the first call that you and I had. And I said to you, this is how it's going to go. This is what we're talking about. This is the way it's going to go. And how have you managed to do some of the things you've done in your work, which we're going to hear a bit more about? And you said it's about being brave. It's about making brave choices. Okay. So Bola, we'll start with you.
Hi. Morning, guys. Nice to be here. Thank you. I didn't realise I was speaking first. I was actually going to see what you guys say. So
Your first chance to be really brave,
then.
then.
Yeah, now it's time for me to be brave. So I think mainly for me, so just give you a bit of a background of myself. I'm a structural engineer, and I've been practicing structural engineering for the last just under 20 years, I would say. And for the last 5 of those years, I've ran my own practice called Tisserand Engineers. And as a young practice, you work with lots of smaller projects. And if you're lucky enough, you get to work a bit more exciting projects, and so on and so forth. So I think for us, being brave is actually coming into the marketplace as a new entity, but showing people that you can be different and you can actually, if you like, curb the status quo. So for us to be brave is not just about following what everyone else has done, and not just that, as when you run your own practice or when you move from one, for me, when you move from one company to another, you tend to bring some of your, if you like, your, how can I put it, your habits from your previous place. But when you start a new venture, you have to stand out. So for us, standing out meant, you know, doing things differently. So that could be working with builder control, for example, and you know, our work could be slightly different when we're doing a lot of natural buildings, building with natural materials, or something that's slightly different to what they expect. And that could be, as, for example, things as simple as removing clay heave from a building because you think that it's over-designed, you know. And it's that element of making sure that we have done what we think is correct, but also do the research and then follow it through. And I think that's almost the insight of how we try to be brave. You know, we've understood the principles of things and followed it through all the way through to construction. And one thing we don't do, and this is quite key, is literally pass it on down the line and then, you know, shut our doors and not be around to answer questions or, you know, and that sort of thing.
Yeah, and I can definitely speak for the fact that you do practice like that, because you were the structural engineer on the last project that I was doing as an architect before I changed roles into this kind of thing. And actually the project was a WikiHouse-based project, which is a nice segue into your work.
Nicely. Yeah, so is this working? Yeah.
Keep it close, yeah.
I work with WikiHouse, which is a modular, bio-based, low-carbon building system that also happens to be open source. And what that means is that we actually give it away for free. You can go on the website right now and download about 200 different components. We call them blocks because they remind us of Lego, so Lego but for real buildings. And that can be a scary thing to do because it's not the norm in the industry, giving things away for free. But the reason we're doing it is because we have, you know, I think we're all very aware that we are in an emergency right now as we're sitting here. Buildings are being built in very damaging ways to us all. And we have got a solution that we want to put out there and say, this is for everybody. Go and use it, modify it, improve it, tell us about it. Just use it. It's yours already. And that really ties in with some of what Joanna said this morning around collaboration, because we could not do this on our own. There's no way we can do it alone. One of the really good things about open source is that it literally opens it to the whole world. So right now we're seeing WikiHouse projects in 5 different continents because of this. And yeah, so it can be quite scary. We're a very small team. We have check-ins every week about how we're doing things differently, and kind of a lot of the time just navigating that can be quite a lot, but we are really encouraged by the huge network that we're building. And on a personal note, I've lived in Scotland for 20 years. We don't have a WikiHouse network established in Scotland yet, so today could be an opportunity to talk to you guys later, as I'll be around all day about that.
What an offer. Maybe, Louise, you can pick that up directly with Mel, but also we'd love to hear your story.
Yeah, so my name is Louise. I work at Best. I'm going to give a slightly more personal reflection on what it's like to be brave, maybe less related to the kind of day-to-day life, but more about my journey. So I'm technically a structural engineer, although I would never call myself one, because I spent 5 years studying and many thousands of pounds of debt to realise that actually I don't think being a structural engineer is for me. So yeah, much to my parents' disappointment about that. My dad definitely thought he was going to have a structural engineer on tap for all of his building projects, but anyway, here we are. So when I graduated, I really was kind of in a position of, what am I going to do with my life? What am I going to do? What's important to me? So I thought, I was working in research at the time, so I thought, I'm just going to stay in research. That's great. Started a PhD, 6 months down the line, decided it wasn't for me. So I found myself once again wondering, what am I going to do? I then made a move to industry. I went to a small startup who really resonated with what was important to me. So that was working for an employer that was working towards our journey towards a more sustainable built environment and kind of beyond net zero. So I worked with them for a year, but something was missing. So after a year, once again, I found myself in the position of, what am I doing? What am I going to do? Is the construction industry for me? Is this the sort of place that I want to be working in? Really what was missing was, I'm an academic at heart, so I have a really quite extensive background in research and development and feel really passionate about innovation. So when the opportunity to join the MMC team at the time at Best came up as an impact manager, it really did seem too good to be true. And I must admit, one of the prerequisites for my next job was not to be sitting on a panel in front of 300 people, but here we are. And what's been really amazing is that I've been able to take all of the stuff about all of my previous roles that I love and do them every single day at Best. And I think kind of the point of this is, there was so much uncertainty during that time when I was graduating, whether I was making the right decisions, whether I was being responsible in leaving roles, and you have responsibilities and things that require you to have bills paid at the end of the day. But really just knowing what is important to you, what resonates with you, and the sort of people that you want to work for. And I think that basically brought me being here. So a much more personal reflection on being brave compared to starting your own companies and things like that. But equally important, and I'm sure others can resonate.
For a minute there when you were saying, and then when I'm thinking about my next job, I was like, whoa, wow, like she's, did you? Don't leave us, Louise.
No.
It was a step too far getting her to sit in front of you all. It was a step too far.
No, I actually keep making the kind of comment that I think I peaked. You know, I really don't know where the sort of, I just don't think it would be replicable. And also, I guess another part is that although I've been in a few different roles, everybody has been so collaborative. The people that I've been working with have all got kind of collaboration at their centre. You know, earlier on I was watching all 3 of my past employers sitting next to each other at the top. So there's not many places that you can say that work so collaboratively with one another that past employers can be sitting next to each other.
I mean, you all talked about that collaboration, and perhaps you might have a question for each other, but one to kick off, and then you can all start with your questions as well, would be just a reflection on the collaboration and how important that is. I know it's a real buzzword, right? At the moment, everybody talks about the need for it, but it is about coordinated interconnectedness, collaboration, which is actually completely the opposite of competition in lots of ways. And particularly, Mel, what you were talking about, you just said, so we give it away for free, so you can all have it and work on it, and then we need to collaborate. And so just would like you to reflect a little bit about how important collaboration is, and what does it look like in your work, the collaboration? Bola, maybe.
For us, I think it's about, I think if I take one step back, we have this thing about a T-shaped professional where we try to mold ourselves on having a good depth of knowledge in your chosen field, but having a broad understanding than everyone else's. And I think Joanna touched on it earlier on when she spoke, when she talked about understanding other people's wants and other people's pain points, And collaboration for us is that, because ultimately, in a team, we are looking after everyone else and everyone else's interests rather than just our own. And I think the old way was, we work in silos and deliver our work and then move on. But actually, we're always thinking of, how does my decisions affect the architects or the M&Es or the clients, and the end user. So collaboration for us is actually thinking about how our design actually works with others. So close-knit collaboration is quite key, and trying to have that mindset of the ongoing effect is really important.
Thank you. Mel?
Yeah, I would add to that, 100% what you've said, understanding the different groups, understanding the needs of the end user, that is really, really important to us. We are working for WikiHouse, in the case of WikiHouse, across so many countries, so many different contexts, and the beauty of having so many eyes and being able to actually bring it all together. So we regularly update the system, for example, and we have got lessons learned sessions. So that's just one little example of how we might feedback to the community what we've learned from them, because there's absolutely no way we could do it alone. So just kind of cultivating those relationships. And I don't mean just architects or engineers, but literally everybody, academics, housing providers, activists, educators. We were here at Best on Monday working with college educators from Scotland, for example, showing them the system and just kind of showing them how to build with it. So yeah, so just kind of broadening we call it the WikiHouse community. Everybody is invited to be part of it, and then feeding back to them what it actually means, whether it's something very, very technical, or whether it's something a bit more, literally just making it easier to access the things on the website. So just end user type stuff.
Yeah, I think as well, I'm sorry, I'm looking at some of the questions.
There's some good ones, isn't there?
Yeah, and obviously a bit around collaboration and bringing people in, and the people who don't want to, maybe are more reluctant to join the journey. I think at the end of the day, if people aren't willing to collaborate and be a part of this change, they're going to be left behind. It's not the people in this room that we need to worry about. It's everybody else. But at least when everybody is kind of in this sort of, in the room and in the space and in the talking, you've all got such a unique opportunity, because you've put yourself in a position to be a part of this. And you will be moving towards with the kind of the transformational change.
I'm going to jump in and get my mic.
Nicholas, mic on.
Number 5, if you can. That's great, thank you. We're all human. There's some brilliant questions coming in, as I would expect. And the first one I'm going to touch on is something which I was touching on earlier as well, and this thing about end-stage capitalism, and it's the antithesis of working bravely and working together for a better future. And it keeps moving on the screen, which is joyous.
There it is, it's back at the
there
top.
There we are. So how do we collectively handle this kind of dichotomy of capitalism and, power over each other, and I'm going to make more money than you, to this being collaborative and being brave and being a change? How do you think you, in your day-to-day lives, can impact that? Because it's a massive problem. And we will have all the answers, I'm sure. And, it is a huge challenge that we're all wrestling with in this room. How do we sit with that? And what can we do individually to just keep moving forward.
I'm going to pounce exactly on the word you just said about what can we do individually. Don't be an individual. Don't stay an individual. Like, I don't think any one of us got to where we're at today working together by thinking, how am I going to fix this? That I becomes a we. We have to look at like how we move together. I don't know if you feel like similar about that or not. Bola, if you've got any. I mean, I feel like they're all looking at me like, please don't ask me. Don't let it be me. Like, there's another really nice question here. Can you see them? Yeah. There's another much nicer question. No, let's get the hard one. Let's get in there. Let's do that. There. That's why, also, by the way, you all upvoted that question. So you obviously want to hear this.
Yeah. Obviously, wasn't looking at you hard enough, was I? I mean, it's an interesting question. It's a good question. I mean, there's various ways that I can only speak from my experience, and there's two prongs. One, we look at it from a sense as, are we, capitalism, is it a sense that, there's always a loser for there to be a winner? Or is it a case that we could all win collectively, i.e. what's important to us is important to the client and it's important to so on. So there's two examples I would give. I mean, the first example where we've come across clients who, obviously bottom line is really important, we get that, but we're at a stage, and I think it might be quite, we're lucky that we're at this stage now where we actually are stopped working with certain clients. Because of that, we've literally just stopped working with them because it's just wasn't conducive, and and the client starts to realise that they need to understand how they need to grow with the design team or with the consultant. So that's one thing that we've done. The second thing we've done is actually demonstrated how it can benefit them as well. So in one of the examples I'll give later on today when I'll talk about one of the projects, we had a solution where, it actually saved the client money as well, but it was good sustainability-wise. So I think there's those two aspects there that you can, if you like, demonstrate to clients. And I'll touch on that one a little bit later, I suppose.
Yeah. Would either of you like to build on it?
I think just on the question for you, Bola, I mean, looking at choosing to leave a client behind, I mean, that could be seen as something quite brave, that, I'm sure there would have had to have been a bit of debate about how did you come to that kind of sort of decision about leaving them behind? And I guess that also falls on from my last point about the people who aren't willing to be a part of this journey do get left behind. And you saying, sorry, you're not working with us as part of that.
Yeah, no. So I think the reason why I say we were lucky, because we ended up in the position where we had enough work, right? So we had the opportunity to either join the capitalism gravy chain and just grow, or actually see if we can do a great job with the small, compact group of people that we work with. So we decided that we'll do the latter, just simply because it became, I don't know if it's the same for everyone else, but we found when you work with the wrong people, it just becomes so much work. It just becomes too much work. And then if you're not aligned, if your principles are not aligned, then the question is, as Fumbi mentioned in her talk today, is why are we doing it? Because what actually ends up doing is that what we realize is that you end up getting on a roller on a wheel where you're just doing it to get the invoice and then pass it on, when we didn't want to be that. So it goes back to our principles and what we wanted to do, and we didn't want to be a conveyor belt group of people where we just get projects in and then pass it along, get projects in and then pass it along.
Yeah.
I just want to add something that came to mind just listening to you guys, which was us of us working with MMC, like often just focus on this like teeny tiny slice of the pie, which we might, be tempted to fight over. But actually, we should be looking at the rest of it, which is all this carbon-intensive construction happening, as I said, right now as we're sitting here, and how we can actually change that. So no fighting each other in our little piece of the cake, if you like, but looking at what else is happening, because the work that is out there for us is so immense.
I think that's true, and I know we've got a very popular question on top, which we'll come to in a second, but Becca does say, those of us who want to collaborate are working collaboratively, How do we bring others who prefer to work more competitively into the fold? And I think this is a conversation that Douglas and I were having a couple of weeks back around how do you get from a place of engagement with people where you move away from seeing each other as competitors to understanding what the opportunity for collaboration is between you. And I think it is that. It's a combination of those things that you've said where, you have to expand. We have to create a better narrative. There's a better story to be told here. And we can do that by, collaborating together to grow this sort of space that we're taking up, to show that it's not about investing all that energy, as you were saying. It's not about investing all that energy in trying to work against something, but actually just saying, look, there's a better way to do this, and we'll be over here. So when you're ready, let's go. And I think when you come with that offer to a conversation, which is, I'm not interested in having what you have. I want us to have to have something better together because of that accountability that people were talking about earlier on, because we know that when we get asked, what were you doing? What did you do? We all then can say, well, we did what we were trying to do, which was to create a more positive future, I think. Shall we take this top question?
I think we've got to take this top one. And something I love about all of the conversations we've had today? It's not about the technical, how do we do this? It's about people. And it's our behaviours. And Sarah, first of all, thank you for not saying this anonymously. That must have been a challenge in itself to put this question out there. Being an anxious introvert coming to a conference like this is brave for me. Well, thank you for coming. Really appreciate your contribution. Are there any introverts on the stage? Those of you, if you are, you may or may not want to tell people that you're introverted. And also, what is introverted? That's a whole different question. My definition of introvert is you get your own energy from within, and extroverts tend to get their energy from other people. So how we actually behave and how we bring ourselves into a room depends on whether we're introverted or extroverted. And many of us are a bit of both as well, depending on all sorts of different factors. But if you're not a natural extrovert and you feel very uncomfortable either being at a conference or sitting on a stage, how do you then manage to inspire and influence and lead other people? And I think it comes back to being authentic, but I'm really keen to hear what any of the panelists that want to share.
I am an introvert. I'm going to need a long nap after this to recover. One thing that I have personally found with WikiHouse is being really, really open about when things don't go to plan, when things don't work out, and lots of things will not work out in an open source project. But when you do that, when you're open about it, you find that others will also be open about it. So that personally has been the best thing for me. And for the project itself, as we grow and as I was saying, as we improve it and release improvements and modifications and things like that, we are gathering all those learnings from collaborators from all over the world who, you have conversations one-on-one and you're like, yeah, I messed up this, but actually this is the better way of doing it. In the first version of Skylark, the currently system that we released, we had a way of connecting the blocks that just didn't leave enough space for hands to go in to put the insulation into the blocks. And so we were at the site, and they were looking for the person with the smallest hands, which happened to be me. And I was like, guys, that's great, I'm here, but this is not we cannot replicate this everywhere we build.
We can't just share you with anybody doing the project. So, Mel comes as part of the package.
So we had to go back to the drawing board and just remove those things and make it a bit better and easier to use.
I think coming to this conference for me has been quite nerve-wracking. Mel and I were discussing this morning about our nervousness about coming on stage. And for those that know me personally, know that I am actually quite a confident individual, but when it comes to standing in front of many people, it can be quite nerve-wracking. As well as that, something I find really, really challenging is going up to people and just starting a conversation. I seem to have an inability to talk when it happens, and not very good at making small talk. So Sarah, now we kind of know each other. You can just come up and chat to me, and maybe we can have a nice conversation.
Yeah, I think as well it's thinking about why you were doing it that lets you do this. And I think if we all have different events have different levels of nervousness, and you can never really know how that's going to play out. But if you are in that moment, it's just going, why are we here? We're here because there is some pretty heavy existential crises like facing us down. And we know that we're here to try and have as much positive impact as we can and to leverage, to show that we're all here trying to do as much as we can together. So to leverage the privilege that we've got, to leverage the kind of impacts that we can make. So a question directly for you, Mel. Keep your questions coming as well. Like, don't rest on your laurels. I mean, I will maybe start to have to offer prizes for more questions. Maybe that's how this is going to go. But a question for Mel. What would a successful network in Scotland look like for WikiHouse? Who would you like to collaborate with or hear from? Excellent.
So if you would like to build with WikiHouse, talk to me. If you would like to supply WikiHouse as an end-to-end stack to customers, talk to me as well. So the issue that we're having, and again, another thing we've learned is that we've had so much demand and people coming to us wanting to build the thing, and then we actually had to build the network after that. So we didn't have it ready, and we do have it now in England. We have we're working with design and build companies, for example, who already have got all the their own setup ready to go, and they can introduce WikiHouse to what they offer. And so when a customer comes, we're able to connect them to, here's somebody in Leeds, here's somebody in Devon, wherever it is in England. In Scotland, we do, again, we're in a slightly similar position where we do have inquiries, we have interest, and we're like, oh, we could actually work with manufacturers down south, but ideally we would like those manufacturers, we would like those relationships with designers, with engineers. And also, if you're a housing provider, one thing, the dream for us at the moment is to build social housing. So any social housing providers, please come talk to me.
There you go. You have a direct offer. All right, so we've got a question from Lindsay. Question from earlier regarding implementing sustainable practices in every day, being for the privilege and poverty being a huge barrier to sustainability, particularly in a city like Glasgow. How do we overcome this barrier for communities? I think this is really, I read something somewhere this week around that poverty is this huge barrier to innovation because of circumstances you may find yourself in grappling with. That doesn't mean that there isn't so much opportunity available to you if those barriers were not right in front and constructed around you. And I think this is a really important question when we talk about the just transition particularly as well. What does that mean, the just transition? What does it mean to really provide opportunity? I think there's a lot of conversation around the need for skills for net zero, whatever that means, but like it's in the hundreds of thousands. But that's not about like just suddenly like creating a production line of people to do some jobs. The people are here. We have people available who are keen, who want to be part of a change, but there are constructs that are preventing that. Yeah, so I don't know, does anybody want to reflect on that as a barrier, and what are the things that we can do around that?
I think it's a loaded question, and I think it's not just, I mean, likely we do not have the answers for how we can overcome the barrier, but that's what everybody in this room is here for, you know, to bring everybody together so that we can discuss this. How can we overcome these barriers? How can we bring the right people in, the people who aren't in this room? You know, I'm sure we all know, when I'm thinking about certain kind of individual people that I know that are one-person jobs people with their van, they're not in this room. And I feel quite strongly, because I know a few of them, about really influencing those people and then the people that they are then talking to, because that's the kind of the group of people that we maybe aren't reaching that do actually have a really significant impact and reach. You know, these are the sort of people that are going in and doing jobs in people's houses and doing repairs and refurbishments and all that sort of stuff. So I think, for me personally, how do we reach those people?
Just from my experience, we, back in London, we worked on a project in North London called Wolves Lane, where the initial scope was to not use any concrete or any steel. So it was a project, it was a community project, so it was to be used widely, and ended up being just a traditional timber construction, straw bales, and rubble foundation. Now, the beauty about this particular project was that the community it's such a low-tech build, such a low-tech technology, that the community was able to come in and help build it. And that's a good example of spreading the knowledge, right? And educating people about low-tech technology. So that's something that can be done in anywhere in the UK, you know, just where we work on projects. Construction projects is such a close gate, you know, you don't get everyday people being able to get involved or to understand what's going on behind the barriers. But there's many projects that you can work on where you can utilize low-tech materials such as timber, and actually it can be built by the community. I mean, Wiki House is a prime example, right? When we did our Wiki House, it was just a mallet, you know, and some screws. These are low-tech technology, so there are opportunities out there. It's just about, I suppose, how we educate everyone and give everyone the opportunity to get involved in these initiatives.
Yeah, I just want to add, if you Google Wiki House, probably one of the first images that you find is like little kids with mallets. Because we've had so many of these community projects where like the community has actually come together to assemble the thing that they're building. And it is like showing them how to do it, showing them that anybody can be taught. Like we issue IKEA-like manuals where you just like, you know, learn how to put things together. And then you have the opportunity to get everybody involved. Last year we were at Best Fest and we had like over 3 hours, I think, we taught attendees how to actually build a Wiki House. So that is a lovely example. And I just wanted to add as well that one of the beautiful things about it, one of my favorite things, is that low tech. You can cut your blocks with just a CNC machine. Your CNC machine could literally be in the community. It doesn't have to travel far. Sometimes it does because we don't have it very close. But like, you know, in May, for example, we built a structure and the CNC machine was only 6 miles away. So, you know, keeping it really, really local is so important to show people how it can be done together.
Yeah.
Could I just add one more thing onto that as well? My big thing is about education in the terms of not necessarily in a formal way, but just, you know, sharing knowledge. And actually, I think the next thing for us as an industry to do is, as we educate, you know, communities how to build low tech or anything similar, is also educate how to maintain the building, because that's actually a big thing in our industry where, well, in society actually, in terms of, you know, we have this massive building or this massive assets that we live in, we work in, we play in, and so on and so forth. But actually the knowledge of how we maintain it, how we look after it, is actually quite low. And I was at a conference and I spoke about something that about a few months ago, and I mentioned, you know, if we think about what's the most expensive thing that we own, right? Probably a house, maybe, or if not, it might be a car, right? And the analogy I gave was, it's actually a requirement for you to there's actually a requirement for you to actually to MOT that car on a yearly basis. But when it comes to looking after our homes, and if you like having an MOT on a home, we leave it into disrepair. And I think that's all based on, if you like, our attitude to buildings and making sure we understand how we actually maintain and look after our buildings.
Yeah, I think that's really interesting as well. I think it's coming back to what you mentioned as well, Joanna, about like, rather than pushing forward, and I'm really interested in that, the MOT for your house bit being a retrofit, absolute obsessive, but it is understanding the outcome that we're trying to get to. And I think a lot of the solutions in the built environment have obviously come from the built environment, but they affect everybody. And the things that resonate with people are what you're actually trying to achieve, not the how you're trying to achieve it. So being outcomes focused is just going to be the most important thing that we can be when it comes to, I suppose, accelerating that change. And I know that Elle's question has jumped up above Scott's, but I think Scott's is kind of connected to what we've just said, and we might just want to take that one.
No, absolutely. And I think it's this, you know, advocating for a just transition is about being brave in the built environment. But, you know, screaming into the void, you stole my words from earlier, screaming on the beach with a bottle of whiskey. You know, it's kind of how we're feeling today, especially today. But I love how you changed this conversation around to what was the first moment, panelists, when you were able to step into that bravery and use your agency and your power? And you could either answer that one, or what was your most recent? Who wants to go? Who's going to be brave and go first?
I'll be brave. No, that's fine. I guess coming back to what I was talking about earlier with my kind of personal journey, I'm not really sure what I want to. Probably one of my first moments of being able to kind of step into bravery was turning down a job role because the company really did not resonate with what was important to me. And when I look back, I'm so glad because it was just bad vibes all over. So I was really glad that I did that. But, you know, when you're, I mean, not even just a new graduate, but even in you could be experienced in industry, whatever, but when you are kind of on that brink of indecisiveness or what am I going to do, and you're offered an opportunity, but it doesn't align with what you value, that's quite scary. You know, it's quite scary to say, actually, that's not for me, and then continue to look for something else. So I think that was probably my most notable, which is just as well, because it obviously landed me here. So that's
Meant to be. Either of you?
I just wanted to add, even though I love working with WikiHouse and new buildings, I actually do a lot of work around retrofit in my community, and about 18 months ago, I had to step into a bit of a leadership role there, and that just kind of pushed me to just have, just not care anymore about what people think, and just kind of, if you have a message, you have to communicate it. And that actually has also helped with my work, my paid work with WikiHouse. And as an introvert, that is particularly taxing, but you know, if you have to act, which we all have to, then that is a real invitation for you to just step in and just like, here I am, this is what I can do. And you know, perhaps encourage others to, you're stepping up, perhaps encourages others to do the same.
Yeah. Bola?
I was just thinking what I could speak about, because there's potentially a few, but I would say, again, I was lucky enough to have lots of good peers, and I surrounded myself around great individuals, and actually, is it really bravery of me if I'm forced to be brave? I don't know. And when I'm with a certain group of people who are going in a certain direction, you know, it's easy to get onto that bus, right? Because you're within a community where you are okay to fail. You know, you're okay to look at your work and learn from your feedback. I mean, the project I spoke about before is an example of that, where we didn't use concrete foundations, and building control kept on asking us, "Are we sure? Are we sure? Are we sure?" And then we thought, "Oh man, maybe you're right." You know, you start to have doubts. But for us, I think the reason why we were able to stand our ground, because we were comfortable and we were confident. So being brave needs to stem from a place of being confident, and the reason why we was confident, because we ended up being more niche, you know, and we worked on a particular type of building, so we focused our energy on that aspect. So some of the questions we previously about collaboration and, you know, working with people who don't want to collaborate, it's easy to work with people if you're an expert in one particular element. So for us, I don't know if I can say we were brave to be brave. I think in a way because of the where we are in society, I think we had to be, you know, and because of the company we keep, we had to be. So I think that's how I'll answer that one.
I love that, the company we keep. And I'm thinking while you were all talking about, it's finding your own tribe, not the echo chamber, but finding the people that have the same values as you, that want to reach the same goals as you, so that going into work becomes a joy and it doesn't feel like work. And I think that's when you know you're in the right space. But that can take a long time to get there. I'm well into my 50s and I've only kind of just got there, I would say. And it's the sudden realization that actually I'm in the wrong tribe. I need to go and find my own one. And actually, it kind of leads on a little bit to Elle's question. I think we've probably got time.
Which is our last very quick
Yes.
reflection.
Very
on
quick
that.
reflection. We can all read Elle's question. I won't read it out, all of it, but what would you all say? Just a quick 2 or 3 words each. What do you say to the naysayers who only listen to the negative, misleading headlines and are not on the bus, as it were?
I would say, how often do you read positive headlines? They're only going to show the crap. Well, not the crap, but the stuff that is attention grabbing and people are going to talk about. Otherwise, news outlets would probably be out of their depth. So yeah, I would just be like, how often do you read positive things? Because we all know collectively that they exist.
I would be saying you need to have, again, it was mentioned earlier on today, you need to have a North Star, you need to have a philosophy, a principle that you need to stick to and be unwavering in that, if you like, in that goal. And if you are, then decisions will be easier for you to make because you know whether it sits with your principles or whether it doesn't.
I've got lots of examples and stories to show to the naysayers. So if I can take them to what we're doing on the ground. So it's not like a theoretical thing, but like actually coming into a community and seeing what's being built, showing them perhaps how to build with it, and actually becomes not just like a distant idea, but an action. So for me, that's the important thing. Ambition into action.
Yeah.
Oh,
And I always think about this one as well when we asked the same question of Kate Rayworth, the author of Down Economics, about how she deals with the naysayers, but the big time naysayers. And her answer was, I don't. And I thought that was really bold. She was like, I don't expend all my energy into the naysayers. And I think what you said is great. You can prove because you can point to things, and this is what the ambition into action is. The action creates the tangible. We can point to that, we can measure that, and that is what we're all here to try and do. So thanks, everybody. Let's share our appreciation for our wonderful panelists, and thank you for your questions.